I was raised by an army of gay men.
Mama, you look fierce.
Diner core aesthetic.
Come on, Mom.
We're going to hell.
Welcome to the Madam House podcast.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
Hi.
Today we have a very special guest.
She say hi already. She's ready.
She's ready.
She didn't even want an
I'm here.
introduction.
Yeah, no introduction for her.
No, they all know who she is.
The renowned Teddi Gold.
Hello.
Hi.
How should we introduce you? I mean, you're an icon. You've got a song in Sex Life of College Girls, Neil Patrick Harris Uncoupled.
Mm-hmm.
You've got it in the new Diane Keaton movie.
Mac and Rita.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I like countless other things. Haven't you been in an Apple commercial too? And
Yeah. Had
legend.
spots in Apple, Old Navy, Maybelline. It's kind of crazy.
When did you first get into music? It was later in life. I mean, I know
Yes.
we've talked about this before, but it was like in your early 20s, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting because as a young girl, I was obsessed with putting on plays for my parents. I have two younger brothers. And so when my parents divorced at 6, but prior to their divorce, they lived in this house and there was this playroom. And I created a stage and I would make my parents come up and watch plays that I made up, and I'd dress my brothers in girl outfits and put dresses on them and put wigs and put makeup on them, and we would just do these numbers, and like I just love performing as a young kid, and I like played piano and I would sing
Now, when you say parents, was it mom and dad?
Yeah, so my parents were married, mom and dad, man, woman, till I was 6. And then they got divorced because my dad came out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So we can go there too. But
We will.
We'll circle back.
Yeah.
So I got super into performing as a kid, and then it kind of segues there because my parents divorced, like I just mentioned, when I was 6. My dad came out and he started dating this guy who was a piano player. And he performed on cruise ships. And so I spent a lot of years on cruise ships and watching my dad's partner at the time play piano. And there was like performers. And also my great grandma was a performer, and she was like a contract actress at Paramount. And so I had a lot of like performers in my life. And I just grew up with that. And
that's when you were living in the Caribbean, right? Because of the cruise ship situation?
Yeah. So I was born in Seattle, but I moved to the Caribbean shortly after my parents got divorced. We can also backtrack there, but there's a whole reason we ended up in the Caribbean. But yeah, so we were in the Caribbean at the time when my dad was dating this guy who was a piano player and performed on cruise ships. And so yeah, I was just exposed to a lot of music and performance and just always loved it. And then we ended up moving to LA when I was in 8th grade. And so I went to high school just down the street in West Hollywood. And so I was exposed also to a lot, the entertainment industry. And all of a sudden there's like, I have friends in my classes who are actors and actresses. And I just, my eyes were like, this seems like something I kind of want to do. And so I started getting into acting classes, but I was really shy in high school. So I just didn't.
Really?
Yeah, because I moved from the Caribbean and I was used to growing, I grew up in like the small island. There was like 10 people in my class, and then all of a sudden I was in LA and in a massive school in a massive city, and I just kind of was shell shocked,
Yeah.
So I got a little shy, and then I went to college in Texas, and in my last year of school in Texas, I was really unhappy with the path I was going down, and so I started taking piano lessons again. And I was just like, man, I just love music so much. And then I started taking an acting class and loved just like being in front of people. And so it just kind of like snowballed. And then I ended up coming back to LA after school, and I thought I wanted to be an actor. And then I started auditioning and taking vocal lessons. And I didn't really like singing. Like I didn't like performing covers. I wasn't that interested in it.
Really?
But once I took a songwriting class, I was like, oh my God, I love writing music. Yeah. That is my thing. I want to sing anything I write. I don't want to sing a cover. I'm not interested, but if I write it, I will sing it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And so, yeah, so that's kind of how it all, and then it just kept snowballing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was older, like consider, in the industry standard older to get started. I was probably 24 when I first wrote my first song.
Yeah.
And put it into the world.
What song was that?
It's not online anymore.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like my very, very first EP, which is not online anymore. But it was released in like 2016, maybe.
Why it's not online?
I just changed styles so much. Like the first EP I put out was a country EP.
Ooh.
So
Really?
I went through a lot of evolutions. Like I did a country EP, then I did this like really dark cinematic pop thing, and then I got into my bright, really fun percussive pop, which I do now.
Nice.
So I just like went through a lot of evolutions to kind of find my thing, and it just didn't really feel like me anymore. So I kind of took it all down.
Oh.
I said bring it back and mix it with what you do right now.
It's possible. I could totally like re-record those songs and make them
With what you know
with
now.
what I do now. But yeah, it was just kind of the snowball effect of how I ended up being a songwriter.
Yeah. And you're incredible at it. I mean, I know Teddi because she was playing a show in Hollywood, and I was there for my friend was singing backup, and so we just stayed for the whole show, and Teddi came on next, and she had such a stage presence. She had her backup dancers. She was doing choreograph, and this is in like a very small like basement venue in Hollywood.
Yeah, it was like a cellar.
It's literally a cellar. Like there's like.
I could raise my hand and touch the ceiling. That's how small it was.
Yeah, I had to like be careful.
How
like,
were you
ducking.
walking, Tina?
I was like hunched over. I was like, like how am I gonna get around in here? And she just brought so much presence to this like small space, and I was like, I need to know her. I need to. I want to create something with her. I don't know, but she's the moment, and so. After, and I was looking Frumpty Dumpty. Like I was like, okay. But I was like, whatever, I need to talk to her. This is like my chance, whatever. So after the show, I approached her and I was like, hey, I'm in the industry and I'd love to help you like make something or like collab. Meanwhile, I do like IT stuff in the industry, or like I work very tangentially. So it was like a little bit of a white lie, but I was like, whatever. And she was like, yeah. And so she gave me her managers, air quotes managers,
which was me.
email, which is her. And then
that.
I was with my friends, Ethan and Elise, and they were kind of like behind me when I was like, just like going out on a limb, and they ended up kind of ideating while all three of us were in Europe, the idea for one of her singles that was coming out called Technicolor. And so then we shot a very fun,
it was so fun.
A very fun music video for Technicolor. I'm very proud of it too.
Yeah.
Like I'm so happy with how it all turned out, and how just like the sequence of events.
Very like
and how we did it.
serendipitous. Like just playing the show in Hollywood, and then I had this song that just happened to be coming out, and then it was just everything lined up with like you and Ethan having all these connections with people who had film, and like we really did it for like a do-it-yourself video, but it looks incredible. And
shoestring budget.
Yeah, it's very. If you're listening, you should go check it out.
Yeah, if you haven't watched the video, go watch the video right now.
Technicolor by Teddi Gold.
Yeah,
and it turned out beautifully. Teddi was so much fun to work with on set. It was like a 14-hour shoot day. Like morning to night, we hustled. We were moving and grooving, and it was amazing. And so that's how we
know each other.
Yeah, which I don't know, I love it.
Yeah.
But so when you were growing up, and you kind of experienced, I mean, from a young age, you had two parents that were queer, and then obviously your mother as well. And so how was it kind of dealing with the other kids? Like, were they aware of it? Did they know? Because I mean, this is back in like the 2000s, when
way before
then the 90s. I mean, homophobia was pretty mainstream. I mean, they were using the F slur and like rap songs, and
it was like the AIDS epidemic,
right?
Had coming out of the 80s. There's just a lot of, what's the right word?
hate or
hate, but also just lack of awareness and prejudice, and you know, it's wildly different now. I know we still have a long ways to go, but it's still like, even just from me being a kid, we have progressed at least.
Yeah.
So you were 6 years old when your parents separated or divorced?
So my parents both came from very, very religious families. And they met at a Christian college.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
Yeah. And they were young, and they got married super young, and they had me very young. And then they had both my younger brothers. And so, you ask me all the questions and I'll answer. I don't know. My dad, they did divorce like around when I was the age of 6, because he came out and told my mom that he's in love with men. And, you know, I've talked a lot with both of them about it, and it just, you know, it wasn't right. And obviously, like, he loved my mom, but he wasn't in love with her in the same way.
How did they present it to the kids? Did they talk to you guys about it, or was it like a surprise?
I actually don't have any memory of my dad telling me he was gay. He does, and he says, you know, I was so young, but he says that he set me aside, and I was playing with like my ponies or whatever, and he's having a conversation with me and tells me he's gay. And he said I looked at him, I was like, okay. like I didn't understand. And my memories are mostly of my parents being separated, and my dad's only had really 2 significant partners in his life. And so growing up, it was, you know, I was split between my mom, and she had several different boyfriends throughout, you know, my upbringing, until she eventually got remarried. And then my dad had he's had 2 significant partners, and the one when I was younger, they lived together. And so I actually thought it was normal to have like 2 dads. So I remember being young, and I'd go to kids' houses and be like, so where's your other dad? Like, you know, and it was confusing. And I do remember, you know, the kids were weird, because at the time we were like in a very conservative area, given their background. And like when my dad came out and they got divorced, it was a huge deal.
Where were you at the time?
This was in Seattle.
Okay,
It was a really big deal. Like, we stopped going to church. We weren't really welcomed at church anymore. Like, I grew up going to church until they got divorced. I'd go to like Sunday school, and then when they got divorced, it was this whole thing, and we weren't really welcomed there anymore.
Is that because the church found out, or?
Yeah, it was like there was just like a lot of gossip, and it was uncomfortable for everyone to go. And same at school, like there was a lot of gossip, and even, you know, my extended family had a big issue with it, because they're, you know, very religious. And so I kind of lost some contact with extended family members for some years, just because it was, you know, you're going to hell.
Yeah. So they felt that about you as
not
kids too?
necessarily as me as a kid, but I would hear it. Like, I would go to my cousin's for a sleepover, and we were like 7. And I remember like being in a sleeping bag on her floor, and she saying, you know, and this isn't her saying this to me, but it's her parents saying it to her. And we're sleeping, and she's like, you know, it's just so sad. Your dad's going to go to hell. And I'm there, you know, I'm like 7. I'm like, yes. Like, you know, it's confusing.
Yeah.
And then, you know, certain kids, like I wasn't allowed to go to their house anymore, or they weren't allowed to come to my house. Like I could go to their house, but they couldn't come to my house if it was my dad's house.
Yeah.
But they could go to my mom's house. So it was just like, it became really toxic. And that's part of the reason we ended up moving to the Caribbean, is that it was just really put a lot of strain on my family.
Was it just you and your dad moving to the Caribbean?
No, my whole family. It was kind of a modern family at the time, because we moved to the Caribbean, and it was me, my 2 brothers, my mom, my dad, and his boyfriend at the time, and we all lived in one house.
Wow.
So how did your mom found out he was gay? Like, how did she took it? And
well,
are they friends still? What's going on?
I wouldn't say they're friends anymore. They really tried their best. My dad, I think what happened is my dad met somebody
Okay.
and he realized I'm gay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think my mom caught on to the fact that he was kind of talking to somebody and it seemed more than friends, and it you know, confronted him, and then he, you know, I think it took a while for him to say, yeah, I am gay. And, you know, you know, they went through couples therapy and they figured out, you know, the best thing to do is to get divorced, and they really tried to be friends. And, but it was hard for my mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause you know, she was a mom, she had 3 kids, and she loved him, and, you know, it's hard. This is also crazy. I had an ex-boyfriend who came out to me recently.
Ooh.
And we were together, and I was madly in love with him. And we reconnected like a year ago, and he told me he was gay. And so I got to like experience my mom's experience on a very micro level.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was confusing. I was like, what? You are?
Yeah.
But like, we had sex. Like,
Yeah.
what? Like, we were in love. Like, what happened? And so it was a little confusing, and we talked a lot about it. And I'm really glad we got to have that experience, because it was just eye-opening to me. And, you know, sexuality is so nuanced. Love and sexuality don't have to be the same either.
No.
Right.
You know, like, you can love someone deeply, but sexually you're like, that, you're just not my preference.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? So it was interesting, but we can go there later too.
100%.
So anyway, like, yeah, my parents ended up getting divorced. We moved to the Caribbean, and it was less intense there. But still, like, I was in school, and you would hear people using the F word, like, you're such a F word, you know, like as a negative thing. And I'm in 6th grade hearing this, and like and I wouldn't tell people my dad was gay, because I was like protective of him, and like didn't want, you know, when you hear these things in a derogatory way, you're like, wait, is my dad bad? Like, I don't think he's bad. Like,
Did you grow up with the "that's so gay"?
Oh yeah, that's so
comment?
gay. You're an F, like, all the time, like as a kid.
All that, yeah.
It's like a negative thing, and
right.
So you hear that, and you're like, wait, but my dad is gay, so I don't want to tell people, because I don't want them to make fun of him or me. So I felt really protective, and
and I'm sure that probably contributed to shyness of like you.
It did.
You're protecting yourself. You're kind of going into your shell to just like protect yourself.
Yeah, because I don't,
negativity.
You know, or like, you know, there was like a lot of hate crimes still going on at the time, and there's still hate crimes going on. But I even remember when we first moved here, you know, I don't remember where we were, but someone wrote on my dad's car, like, you're an F.
Really?
And like tagged it. And like, so there was like stuff like that. And and I mean, it's changed a lot now. You know, even when I was growing up, gay marriage wasn't allowed. And like, there's just, it was different. It was different. Yeah. So and it contributed to my shyness for sure. Cause I just, you know, I'd only want to tell people who I felt like safe with.
Yeah.
You know?
Definitely. And so when people weren't allowed to go to your house, were you like, why can't you come over? Like, if it's your dad's, or did you pretty quickly
I kind of intuitively picked up on it. Like, between like what I would hear just like with people talking, and just, you know, as kids, we're really intuitive. We pick up on things. I just kind of put the dots together.
Did it make you ever angry at your dad or hate him or anything?
No, I've always been pretty close with my dad. I had some issues later in life with him that, you know, we resolved, and it wasn't because like he was gay. It was more other things, and, you know, typical like father-daughter stuff. But I never was like resentful that he was gay, like, ever. Like, I think it's great that he had the courage to come out, especially at that time, and given his upbringing. And, you know, it did put a big strain on our family, and I've never been resentful about that. And I've found like forgiveness for that, because I'm just a empathetic person.
When you guys were all living together, the modern family, were there ever conflicts between like your mom and your dad's
Oh yeah.
Boyfriend?
Not so much them. They were friends. I think my mom in her heart like really wanted to be there for my dad. And I know when they first divorced, she did. She was like, this makes so much sense. This is like why we don't have sex. And like, this is why like you never say I'm hot or like, you know, like typical things that happen in relationships. She's like, oh,
he just compliments on her shoes and her dress.
Yeah. And he's like always
in her bag.
He like buys her dresses.
Yeah.
And like he's like always in the garden and making flower arrangements. She's like,
come on, Mom.
And I like look at pictures back then. I'm like, oh my God. I was like, he's a big old like short shorts. I'm like, he was so gay. And you know, and I think she really tried to be there for him, but at a certain point I think it was too hard for her. And then we eventually separated out. And yeah, unfortunately, I'm not close with my mom, and she ended up having like some serious issues with drugs and alcohol. So it like kind of spiraled out in the end. But
do you have contact with her now?
I don't. She's been estranged for quite some time. So.
How is your relationship with your brothers?
It's pretty good. Like I'm close. I'm really close. I have 2 brothers. One lives in Texas and one lives in Japan, and we're close. Okay. Yeah.
I think right now is a great time to listen to a message from our sponsors.
All right.
Yes, we'll be right back.
Sip, slay, serve. Order your serve collection at servevodka.com.
Welcome back.
Hola.
Wait, but even when you were living in Austin, people were...
Yeah. 2 specific memories come to mind when I was living in Austin. One, I joined a sorority because my dad's boyfriend at the time, he's from Arkansas. Talk about like conservative area where you don't want to be gay. Like
literally.
Came from Arkansas, and he went to school in Arkansas, and so he's from the South, and he was like, well, if you're going to go to school in Texas, you got to join a sorority or it's like social suicide if you don't. So I was like, okay. And I like remember rushing and being like, this is really weird. Like I came from LA, WeHo, where it's like, it's like cheerleaders weren't cool at my high school. Like we were like the like liberal arts kids who were like poetry and like, you know, emo kids.
Counterculture.
Like, yeah. Counterculture was cool.
Drama.
Yeah.
Club.
Drama club and like artsy kids and like cheerleaders were lame. Like no one cared about sports. And then I go to, you know, University of Texas, and it's like the biggest football school of all time, and like cheerleaders are so cool and sororities are so cool. And I just remember rushing and being like, this is really strange. And I did get into the sorority, and I just remember the first day, you know, we had to like go around and like say something about like ourselves, and I was brave enough to say in front of a lot of strangers that my dad was gay, because I thought that we were at a time now where it was okay, where I could say it and it not be weird. But I was wrong. And so I like, you know, I'm talking in front of like 200 girls and saying like, it's so cool to be, you know, part of the sorority with these girls, because I grew up with 2 dads and
they're like, say something unique about yourself. And I'm like,
yeah.
I have 2 dads.
Yeah. And I was like, I grew up with 2 dads and 2 brothers. So it's like just nice to be around a bunch of girls. And like, it just went so quiet as soon as I said that. And I was like, oh, oops.
Trying to process and understand.
Yeah. And so like it just forget like, yeah, Austin was a, you know, was a kind of more liberal town, but there was people who were, you know, from all parts of Texas who were there. And so who were like, wait, what?
Still in Texas after all.
Still in Texas.
Yeah.
And so I just remember in that moment being like, you know, spotlight on me saying this. And then, you know, it was interesting, and it was like kind of a little more challenging to like find my group of people. And I remember I dated, not because of that, I just felt always kind of, I've always just kind of felt like a misfit, just a black sheep, you know, trying to find my people, because I just always felt different.
We definitely
yeah,
relate to
I'm
that.
sure y'all I'm sure y'all relate. Just someone always felt like a little bit outside of the box.
Yeah, no, when I lived in Austin, people would say faggot. Like I would just be standing with like my friend or boyfriend, like they would yell it from cars driving by. Like I would just be on the side of the road waiting for like an Uber or something. And they would just drive by and be like, faggot.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh, cool. And this is like 2015.
Totally.
This isn't even
really? Yeah, back in the
like,
day, back in 2001 or so, I was driving my blue Miata, and I would have people, of course it was my blue Miata with the top down.
One
and
of
I
your
had loud
6
music
blue
playing,
Miatas.
and people would yell faggot. And I was like, yeah, and turn up my music and sing a little louder.
yes.
And then I remember I had this moment where I dated this guy, and he was from like a really conservative town. And I told him, I was like, yeah, and my dad's gay. And I grew up with my dad and his boyfriend, who's like my stepdad. And there was just like this long, awkward silence after I said it. And he was like, so how were you born?
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God. Yeah, like you said, out my dad's vagina. And it was just like, I can't. We're done.
Well, and that was before people had surrogates and things like that. But still, the question seems so funny. But I was 18 when my mother actually came out.
Oh, wow.
And she left my father right as I graduated high school. My mother left my father, and she came out, and she was with a woman for 25 years until she passed away. But
wow.
yeah, so I always got a kick out of telling people that I had 2 mothers.
Yeah.
Especially after I came out, and like it was, I love the shock value anyway. And
well, now I do.
Do you? Yeah, at first, but my friends really couldn't understand that I had a lesbian mother, and so then I was really worried about myself coming out because I knew how everybody reacted to my mom, and my mom was pretty cool,
Yeah. Wow.
So, but
yeah, it's more common now than it's ever been to be like, oh yeah, my dad's gay, or people feel like, I think we're just living in a time where it just feels more comfortable and accepting to come out, and it's not such a big deal, which is amazing.
That is nice.
But yeah, I'm sure at the time, you're like, I got 2 moms, and guess what?
Yeah.
By the way.
But yeah, so yeah, it's all interesting.
It's very interesting. And then in terms of that ex-boyfriend that you had, when did you guys date? And then when did he told you this like a year ago that he kind of came out to you? And then
yeah, so I dated this guy maybe 10 years ago, and when I was living in France, and it's a funny story because I call him my uncle, but he wasn't my real uncle. He's my dad's best friend from like before I can remember, and he's gay too. And I just always called him my uncle because they were so close. So I was like my gay uncle. And he lived in France. And so I went to go and study in France, and he hooked me up with this guy. And he was like, you got to meet this guy. And it's the mother of this girl I used to date in high school. So he used to date this girl in high school, and she had a kid, and that's the guy I ended up dating.
Oh,
so your gay uncle dated this
woman.
They had a kid together?
No, not together.
Okay.
He came out to her and was like, I'm gay. It's like a really funny, weird story.
Yeah.
2 degrees of separation there.
Yeah, it's like repeat of history.
It does. It happens.
And so I meet this guy, and we fall in love, and like had this whole thing for like a year. And I was like, oh my God, he's like my first big love. And
he's French.
And he's French. Yeah, he's French. Ooh la la. And and I ended up going, had to go back to school and finish, and ended up coming to LA. And so I was never really going to live in France, but we stayed connected through the years. Yeah. And then last year I went to France to visit him and my uncle, and me thinking we were going to like maybe rekindle things. Like, he comes out to me, and it was really interesting. Like at first I was shocked because I was like, wait, what? And I didn't know what to say, and I didn't want to make him feel bad because I'm like, of course, like I'm the last person who's going to care. Yeah. But also like, what?
Yeah.
And so it took some time to like process it, and I ended up, just asking him a lot of questions, and because it's so nuanced. Like, he did love me, but I'm not his preference, and we still love each other, and I think we'll always be in each other's lives. But yeah,
and that's beautiful.
And I think the lesson there was that, love and sexuality don't necessarily have to go together.
Yeah. It can even happen with a quote unquote straight person.
Yeah.
He's in love with this female, but he's not attractive to that female. He's attractive to a different female.
Sure. Yeah, this is true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just find I have always had a fascination with just sexuality and gender, and I think it's all really interesting.
And it is. And that's what we've been kind of exploring with this, and just the various guests that we want to have on, is just to kind of get their takes on it and their experiences and journeys. And it is interesting that you've kind of had that parallel experience to like what your mom had on definitely a smaller scale, but you can kind of like understand what she kind of went through when it happened when you were
definitely gave me more compassion for her, of like, because I used to be just mad at her, so like, why do you care, like, and I can see like how it was so painful for her, and not that it's his fault, like it's not his fault, but I can see how that experience would have been painful for her.
Yeah, an interesting little side note. My daughter, she was dating a guy for a few months, and they broke up. Mm-hmm. And then she found out later that the guy came out.
Interesting.
And I told her, I said, a lot of people date guys or girls that remind them of their parents. And I said, of course, you are dating somebody who reminds you of
100%.
myself or, your other father. And so... And she was so confused. She's like, "Oh, I turned him gay," and I'm like, "No." I'm like,
"You can't turn anybody
like, let
gay."
me give you my experience. Is the girls that we dated when we were younger, and then we came out to them. It's it's hard, but for the girl, it's just so confusing. I'm sure, you know, but it's such a confusing time, even understanding your own sexuality.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting too, because I think, just psychology wise, like we do, inherently find people that remind us of our relationship with our parents. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't lost upon me that I dated a gay man.
Right.
And I think I've dated a lot of gay men. Mm-hmm. And I definitely have been throughout my life of dating attracted to men who are maybe a little more on the spectrum of their sexuality. Until recently, I'm with someone for the first time where it's like he is full heterosexual, and it was hard for me in the beginning because I'm like, I don't know if I can. Like I'm always more comfortable with someone who's a little more fluid and open.
Well, now the younger generation, they have so many choices of non-binary, different genders. And so it is more acceptable to like somebody who may be a little more fluid or who may be bisexual. And I think it's happening more and more. But
I think so. Yeah. I think it's great. I mean, I just think it's awesome that especially a younger generation feels so comfortable and, feeling like they can say what they like and explore it, and there is way less judgment. I mean, there's still a long way to go, but it's definitely way different.
So how are you with the pronoun they and them?
I don't have an issue with it. I mean, my dancers are both non-binary and identify as they them. I will say, when I first was like growing up with my dad being gay, it was just gay and lesbian. That's all we had, in my world, growing up. And then, as I got more exposed to things and had different friends from different backgrounds, I was introduced to like bisexuality, and it's actually more of a spectrum. And then started meeting people who were trans, and a lot of my dad's friends are also drag queens. And actually, my dad's best friend is a makeup artist, and at night he's Gert Crawford, which is a drag queen diner lady. He only dresses as diner women, like
really?
From the 50s.
I love that.
And,
diner core aesthetic.
Diner core, yeah. And actually, he taught me how to do my makeup as a 16-year-old because my mom wasn't really in the picture at that time. So a lot of like me learning, makeup and hair was actually from my dad's gay friends.
Yeah.
Oh, you must have had a whole array of teachers.
You had a whole team.
Yeah, I had a whole
the gay
team.
dad and the gay uncles. And
Yeah.
Wow.
It was just, I always joke, I'm like, I was raised by an army of gay men.
And that's why you're so fabulous.
Yeah, I attribute that to them. But yeah, it's only been recent that I've started meeting people who are trans or who identify as non-binary. And probably it was just a few years ago that I started meeting people who started identifying as they, them. And I will say it was really hard for me in the beginning, just grammatically. It was so, not that I was like, I'm anti saying it. I would fuck up all the time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think everyone feels the same way.
Yeah.
It's completely hard to get that vocabulary and understanding.
Yeah. So I think, I'm all for it. I just think there has to be a lot of room for people to fuck up.
Yeah.
As long as the intention is there to do well and like to be respectful. Like
100%.
it just took me and sometimes I still fuck it up with
Of
my
course.
dancer Cody. I'm like, shit, sorry, they, I had to be very conscious of it and like almost think before I would speak.
Yeah.
And now it comes second nature, and it's just interesting talking to people who identify as non-binary and their perspective on it, because I don't relate to it personally,
Right.
and I didn't grow up with that either, so it's interesting to just have that perspective as well.
Yeah.
So your
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
your brothers, how were they with your father being gay?
They never had any issues. I think, we haven't talked that in depth about it. My mom did have a lot of, straight men that she dated and who were in our lives also, that I think sort of mentored them in terms of like sports and like, because my dad was not like that. He would try. He was so sweet. He would like try, but he'd always be like, "What's that line for?" Or like he didn't like, he could care less about sports.
The curse of the gay.
Yeah, he's like,
No
like,
sports.
yeah, no sports for him. So I think in that regard they struggle a bit, but I'm like, they always look good. They
Yeah.
always had great clothes, and good
And they
hit-
train at the gyms like they're gonna do a sport.
Yeah, exactly. There was
For no sports.
yeah,
They
exactly.
have athletic bodies, but they don't do any sports.
Yeah.
But so your brothers, did they spend a lot of time with your mom and his or her boyfriend?
They were
or?
split too, like going back and forth, as well. And then I think, we got a lot. Whatever we didn't get from our parents, we had mentors around us that we got that from someone. Like I had a lot of females grown-ups in my life as a kid because my mom wasn't super around, that I got, what I needed, or from my dad's friends who were, more feminine,
Right.
or like, teaching me makeup and stuff. Because my dad also, he doesn't wear makeup. I one time did find, when I was really young, his drag queen outfit in his closet and a picture of him wearing the dress. And I was really confused because I was like 8 and I was like, why is my dad wearing a dress?
You should see my kids. I get dressed at the house right in front of them, and I go out and say bye. They're like, "Mama, you look fierce." I'm like, "Thank you."
That's so sweet.
That is sweet. Yeah, it's just funny. He doesn't really dress in drag ever, but not that I would care, but yeah, it's just funny. Like, so anyway, I think you get whatever this just goes for in general of like anyone, whatever you don't get from your parents, you usually find in other friends or the family you create, and you're not going to always get everything you want from your parent.
Right. Well, if you are any example of what a gay parent can raise, then your dads and your mom, they did a fantastic
Thank
job,
you.
because you seem well adjusted and creative and achieving things in the world. So
Thanks.
And talented.
yeah, they did
Aw.
a very, very good job.
I think they did too. I
So-
mean, they tried their best, and I think it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as there's love, that's what I always say. Doesn't matter as long as there's love.
Amen.
As long as
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
love.
So what are you right now? your career is happening. You have a communication with your dad.
Yeah, I was just in Florida. My dad now lives in Florida with his long-term partner, Chuck, they've been together 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, they're not married. Not that they wouldn't, but they just have chosen not to. And they live in Florida now, so I was just with them.
Yeah, you were on a boat. You were out living. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
Yeah,
She's living the life in
there's
Fort
a lot
Lauderdale.
of they live in Fort Lauderdale. There's quite the community there. It's sort of like Palm Springs, but on the water.
Very gay.
Yeah.
Very gay, yeah.
But on the water.
So yeah, we're in communication, and I'm super close with them. And career has been really fun the last couple of years, just writing a lot of music and performing, and I've had music and TV and making an album, and it's been an explosive couple of years.
Yeah, you just had a song come out recently.
Had a song come out recently about a psychedelic journey. And I'm
acid trip.
I'm very into psychedelics for therapeutics.
Ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca,
Okay.
Wow.
mushrooms. Like I'm a big. When it's done appropriately, it can be very healing in my experience and in a lot of studies that are coming out.
Does it help with your creativity too? Do you ever do that and then write music?
No, I think it does as a byproduct, because for me, this is just personal, but like the more you heal, the more you have accessibility to yourself and like your soul and your higher consciousness.
Yes.
And so the more I focus on healing, the more creative I get.
Wise words.
Yeah.
Very wise.
Yeah. So, we all need healing.
100%.
No one gets out of here,
Unscathed.
unscathed. no matter what. No matter if you even had a perfect childhood on paper, no one gets out, without some cuts and bruises. So
Right. As Taylor Swift said, life is emotionally abusive.
yeah. Yeah, it can be rough.
Yeah.
But when you were kind of growing up, and because I'm curious just for our community out there, when you were growing up and these kids that were treating you differently because of the situation at hand, how did you kind of deal with that, or what are some things that you would like, what's advice you would maybe give to if anyone else is kind of in that similar situation? Like, what were your kind of coping mechanisms? And
well, I wouldn't say do what I did, because I shut down and went inward,
right,
and was really shy. Although in retrospect, I think I had a really vivid internal world, and I think that really plays into my creativity, because instead of being really outward, I was inward, and so I was living in my own imagination and my own internal experience, and I was just kind of a quiet, shy kid who liked animals and, was more interested in animals than people.
yeah.
And that was probably like my trauma response, was just to shut down. It kind of still is. Like anytime I'm triggered, I know it's like I just go in, because I feel like I'm safe inside. But I think part of why I write music is it's an expression. I want it to be like the whole reason I started the project was like, I want it to be this expression of joy and positivity and authenticity and encouraging people to really be themselves. And that's like always my main message in my shows is like, don't care what people say to you, and like, don't listen to the critics. And that's always kind of my message of like empowering you to be yourself, because it's hard. It's hard to like really own yourself. But I think that's why I write the music, is because I relate to it. If like, even just with my dad and seeing him like coming into his own self, and then me going through my own experience of being the daughter of him, and my experience of that, and then coming into my own self with my expression. And so that's kind of the whole reason for why I write music.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're someone out there and you know, you're having a hard time with coming into yourself, just know that there is community out there. It might not be accessible to you like immediately, but thank God we have the internet because you can find it really easily now. And just knowing that whenever you're authentically yourself, like you're gonna find other people, you know. It's better to
100%.
live in your authenticity and feel isolated for a period of time until you find your people than like put on a mask and pretend you're this person that you're not just to fit in. So I just say like lean into who you are and you will find your people, you know. And it might not be your family. It might be something you create.
The family you create. Your chosen family.
Yeah, your chosen family, or it might be your family. Like, and that's awesome if it is. Amazing. But I'd say just it's really important to honor who you are. So
yeah, in the gay community, we often say that there's the biological family, the family you're born with, and then there's the logical family, the one that you decide is your family.
Yeah.
And
I always also say, blood isn't thicker than water, it's just messier.
Very good.
So I think it's important. Like, you shouldn't, just because if you have a family and they're mean to you and they don't accept you, like, you don't have to, you can create boundaries and you can love them, but you don't have to take the abuse, you know? So I totally agree with that.
Yeah. No, I definitely relate to kind of going inward when you're kind of younger and just to protect yourself. I think I definitely did that. And then blossoming later with your creativity, because I think that's kind of happening to me currently. Is like I'm writing a lot more, and I was very imaginative as a kid and just in my head, because I was like, well, that's the only place I'm like safe. I can't put anything out or like write anything because it'll be criticized or like judged or whatever. So I'm just gonna like live in La La Land. And now I'm like, wait, I can actually convey this and actually turn it into something. So I'm like writing things, and I'm like, okay, I have an idea. Like, and then the chosen family and friends, you're like, wait, I have an idea. Let's go do something. And then you do, and then it's like, wait, we created this. Like, look at this beautiful thing that like.
And then you find that like support too.
Yeah.
And it feels really good.
It feels amazing, and you're like, wait, I could have been doing this all along. Like, why was I robbing myself of this?
Yeah, if you believe in yourself, you're able to accomplish as many things as you can and grow as big as you want to grow. You just have to believe on you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
We appreciate your time and your story.
We love and appreciate you.
Yeah.
And
we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Bye.